Sarah's 8-year-old daughter was on life support after a car accident when her husband texted, "Pick up cupcakes for Emma's school party tomorrow." Sarah replied, "I can't. I'm in the hospital with our daughter who's fighting for her life." Her husband coldly replied, "You always make everything about yourself with your dramatic nonsense." His mistress Jessica added to the group chat, "Stop being so ridiculous. Kids get hurt all the time." Then James texted, "Emma's party is more important than your attention-seeking behavior." Sarah stared at her phone in disbelief at their cruelty. Then the doctor came in with shocking news about what her husband had been asking the hospital staff. Sarah is a single mother now to an incredible 8-year-old girl named Lily. Lily has been her universe since James walked out after she discovered his affair 2 years ago. They had built a beautiful life together, just the two of them in their small house across town from where James lived with his mistress and their daughter. Sarah works as a nurse at the regional medical center, which became incredibly important in this story. Sarah's marriage had always been complicated. Her husband James had a way of making everything revolve around his needs and desires. For the past 3 years, he'd been having an affair with Jessica, a real estate agent who lived in the affluent part of town with their daughter Emma, who was also 8 years old. James had been living a double life, maintaining both families while prioritizing Jessica and Emma over Sarah and Lily. Sarah had discovered the affair 18 months ago and filed for divorce, but James had been fighting it, claiming he wanted to work things out while continuing his relationship with Jessica. It was a Wednesday afternoon in April when Sarah's world collapsed. She was finishing her shift in the cardiac unit when her phone rang. Lily's school. The principal's voice was trembling as she explained there had been an accident. A distracted driver had run a stop sign and crashed into the school bus at high speed. Several children were injured. Lily was being airlifted to the trauma center. Sarah doesn't remember the frantic drive to the hospital. She doesn't remember running through the emergency department doors or collapsing in the waiting room. What she remembers is Dr. Marcus Chen's face when he found her hours later. Lily had suffered severe brain trauma, internal bleeding, and multiple fractures. She was in surgery fighting for her life. The next 20 hours were a nightmare of waiting rooms, surgical updates, and desperate prayers to anyone who might be listening. When they finally let Sarah see her daughter, her vibrant, laughing child looked so fragile in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines keeping her alive. She was on life support in a medically induced coma, and the doctors couldn't promise Sarah that she'd wake up. Sarah called James that first night, sobbing into the phone, begging him to come. "I can't handle this alone," Sarah whispered. "Lily might not survive this." "Oh, Sarah," James sighed with obvious irritation. "You're always so overdramatic about everything. Kids bounce back from these things. I can't just abandon Emma because you're panicking about every little bump and bruise." That should have been Sarah's first warning. She spent the next 4 days living in that hospital room. The nurses, her colleagues, brought her coffee and food. They arranged for a cot so she could sleep next to Lily's bed. Sarah held her daughter's hand and read her favorite stories aloud, hoping she could somehow hear her voice. The doctors were cautiously optimistic but realistic about the long road ahead. It was Sunday afternoon when the text messages started. "James, Sarah, don't forget to pick up cupcakes for Emma's school party tomorrow. The ones with the pink frosting she likes from that expensive bakery." Sarah stared at her phone in complete shock. Emma was James's daughter with Jessica, his mistress. Sarah couldn't believe her husband was texting her about cupcakes while Lily was fighting for her life. "Sarah, I can't. I'm in the hospital with our daughter who's fighting for her life." The response came back faster than Sarah expected. "James, you always make everything about yourself with your dramatic nonsense." Sarah actually gasped out loud. The nurse checking Lily's monitors asked if she was okay. She was the furthest thing from okay that a person could be. Then Jessica chimed in on what Sarah realized was a group chat. "Jessica, stop being so ridiculous. Kids get hurt all the time. Emma's been looking forward to this party for weeks. Don't disappoint her because you want sympathy." Sarah felt physically ill. This woman, who had been sleeping with her husband for years, was now lecturing her about priorities while her daughter lay unconscious. "Sarah, Lily is on life support. She might die. How can you call this ridiculous?" "James, Emma's party is more important than your attention-seeking behavior. You've always been jealous of what Jessica and I have built together. Stop using Lily to manipulate the situation." Sarah stared at her phone in complete shock. Her own husband had just accused her of using their dying daughter for attention while prioritizing his affair partner's child. Sarah was still staring at the cruel messages when Dr. Marcus Chun walked into the room. "Sarah," he said gently, "I have some concerning news about your husband." Sarah's heart stopped. Had something happened to James? Despite everything, he was still her husband. "We ran Lily's blood work again, and there's something you need to know. Your husband called the hospital this morning, claiming to be Lily's father. He tried to get information about Lily's condition, and," he paused, looking uncomfortable. "He also asked about Lily's life insurance situation, specifically whether there was a policy and who would be the beneficiary if Lily didn't survive." The blood drained from Sarah's face. "What?" "He told our social worker that he was concerned about the financial burden Lily's care might place on the family and wanted to explore end-of-life options." "Sarah, I have to ask, did you discuss discontinuing Lily's care with your husband?" "Never," Sarah nearly shouted. "I would never give up on her. She's my baby." Dr. Chin nodded quickly. "I didn't think so. Your dedication to Lily has been extraordinary, but I needed to ask because your husband was quite persistent. He seemed to know details about your financial situation and kept mentioning how expensive Lily's care would be." The pieces started falling into place. James had always been obsessed with money and appearances. He knew Sarah had a life insurance policy for Lily through her job at the hospital. Sarah had mentioned it during their divorce proceedings when discussing financial responsibilities. James also knew Sarah had been struggling since he'd stopped paying child support 6 months ago, claiming he needed the money for Emma's private school tuition. "Doctor," Sarah said slowly, "what exactly did my husband say?" He looked deeply uncomfortable. He asked multiple questions about brain death protocols, how long we typically keep patients on life support, and what the process was for making difficult end-of-life decisions. He also inquired about organ donation and whether there were any financial benefits to the family. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. Her husband had called the hospital where she worked, where her colleagues knew her, and essentially asked about killing their daughter for money. That's when Sarah decided to fight back. She screenshot every single cruel text message. Then she did something that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. She started documenting everything. Every conversation, every phone call, every interaction with James and Jessica. The next morning, Jessica called. "Sarah, about those cupcakes." "Jessica," Sarah interrupted, "I need to tell you something. James called the hospital yesterday." "Oh, finally showing some support for once." "He asked about ending Lily's life support and whether there was life insurance money involved." The silence stretched so long Sarah thought Jessica had hung up. That's not possible," Jessica finally stammered. "James wouldn't. I can have Dr. Chin call you if you'd like verification." Another long pause. "Well, Lily's care is expensive. James is just being practical about the family's financial situation. You know he's always been the responsible one." "Practical?" Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "He's talking about our daughter dying." "Sarah, you're being hysterical again. James is just thinking about everyone's future. You know Emma needs stability, and this whole situation is affecting her too." Sarah hung up the phone. Over the next week, as Lily slowly began to improve, Sarah received a steady stream of messages from James and Jessica, not asking about Lily's condition, but about when Sarah would be back to normal and able to help with their family obligations. Jessica actually sent Sarah a bill for the cupcakes she'd had to buy for Emma's party. James texted asking if Sarah could babysit Emma the following weekend because he and Jessica had dinner reservations. Not once did either of them ask how Lily was doing. But the messages kept coming, each one more infuriating than the last. Tuesday morning, while Sarah was helping Lily with her breathing exercises, her phone buzzed with a text from James. "James, Sarah, Jessica's birthday is next month. She wants you to help plan the party like you did for mine last year. The country club is booked, so you'll need to find another venue." Sarah stared at the message in disbelief. Jessica's birthday was still 3 weeks away, and there Sarah was, barely sleeping, living on hospital food and vending machine coffee, watching her daughter relearn how to speak properly after her brain injury, and her husband wanted her to plan his mistress's birthday party. Wednesday brought a call from Jessica. "Sarah, I know you're dealing with Lily's little accident, but Emma's dance recital is this weekend. She specifically requested that you be there because you always bring her those special flowers she likes. You can't disappoint her." "Little accident," Sarah repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "Jessica, Lily was in a coma for 3 weeks. Well, she's awake now, isn't she? Kids are resilient. You're making this into such a big deal. Emma's recital is important, too. Sarah hung up again, but this time she was shaking with rage. Her own husband's mistress had just called her daughter's near-death experience a little accident and suggested that a dance recital was equally important. That afternoon, Dr. Chin found Sarah crying in the family lounge. "Sarah, what's wrong? Is Lily having complications?" "She's improving," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "It's my husband and his girlfriend. They're acting like nothing happened. Like Lily's recovery is an inconvenience to their social calendar." Dr. Chin sat down beside her. "Sarah, in my 15 years of practice, I've seen families handle trauma in many different ways. Some pull together, some fall apart. But what your husband is doing, this level of callousness toward his own child, it's unusual and concerning." "They sent me a bill," Sarah said, laughing bitterly, "for cupcakes for a party I couldn't attend because I was here watching machines keep my daughter alive. Have you considered that maybe you need to protect yourself and Lily from this kind of toxicity?" His words hit Sarah like lightning. Protect themselves. Yes, that's exactly what she needed to do. That evening, Sarah started keeping detailed records of every interaction with James and Jessica. She wrote down dates, times, exact quotes. She screenshot every cruel text message. She even started recording phone calls, which was legal in their state with one-party consent. Thursday brought the most shocking revelation yet. Lily's physical therapist, Carmen, pulled Sarah aside after Lily's session. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and please don't be offended. Did you give anyone permission to call about Lily's treatment plan?" Sarah's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Someone called yesterday claiming to be a family member. They asked about Lily's recovery timeline, what the cost would be for ongoing care, and whether there might be long-term disabilities that would require expensive treatment." Carmen looked uncomfortable. They also asked about home care options and programs for families dealing with permanent disabilities. It seemed like they were more focused on worst-case scenarios than hoping for recovery. Sarah felt sick. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. We can't give out patient information without written consent." "But Sarah, the questions they were asking, they weren't the questions of someone hoping for recovery. They were the questions of someone planning for failure." That night, Sarah called the hospital's patient advocate and reported the incident. They assured her that no information had been given out, but they also suggested she might want to add a password to Lily's file to prevent any future unauthorized inquiries. Friday morning, Sarah was helping Lily with her breakfast when her phone rang. It was her friend Rebecca, James's sister, calling from 2 states away. "Sarah, honey, I just heard about Lily's accident. I'm so sorry. How is she doing?" For the first time in weeks, Sarah heard genuine concern in a family member's voice. She started crying as she told Rebecca about Lily's progress. "That's wonderful news," Rebecca said. "I wanted to call sooner, but James told me you didn't want to be bothered with family calls. He said you were handling everything and didn't need help." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Rebecca, I never said that. I've been desperate for support." There was a long pause. "Sarah, what exactly has James been telling people?" It turned out James had been calling extended family members, mutual friends, and family acquaintances, telling them that Sarah was handling Lily's situation and didn't want visitors or calls because she preferred to manage medical crises privately. He'd been actively preventing people from reaching out to support them. "He told me you were being overdramatic about the whole thing," Rebecca continued. "He said Lily had a mild concussion and you were exaggerating for attention." "Sarah, I'm so sorry. If I had known how serious this was, he's been lying to everyone," Sarah whispered. "What can I do to help? I can drive down this weekend. I can bring food, help with anything you need." Sarah started crying again, but this time it was relief. Finally, someone who cared. Rebecca arrived Saturday morning with a car full of homemade meals, fresh clothes for Sarah, and a giant teddy bear for Lily. She took one look at Lily's condition and started crying. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, gently stroking Lily's hair. "You've been so brave. Aunt Rebecca is here now." Having Rebecca, there was like having a protective shield. She handled phone calls, dealt with insurance paperwork, and most importantly, she witnessed firsthand how James and Jessica were treating Sarah and Lily. Sunday afternoon, while Lily was napping, Sarah's phone rang. It was James. "Sarah, Rebecca called me. She's very upset about something." "What lies have you been telling her?" Sarah put the phone on speaker so Rebecca could hear. I didn't tell her any lies, James. I told her the truth about Lily's condition and about how you and Jessica have been acting. How I've been acting? Sarah, I've been nothing but supportive. I even called the hospital to check on Lily. You called to ask about ending her life support. That's not what I did. I was asking about all the options because I was worried about the financial burden on our family. I was trying to be helpful. Rebecca's eyes widened as she listened. James, you asked about organ donation benefits. You asked about brain death protocols. You wanted to know how to kill our daughter. Well, someone needs to think practically about these things. You're too emotional to make rational decisions about what's best for everyone. Rebecca grabbed the phone from Sarah. James, this is Rebecca. I'm sitting here looking at my niece, who is very much alive and recovering beautifully. What you're describing isn't practical thinking. It's unforgivable. Rebecca, you don't understand the full situation. I understand that you called the hospital and asked about killing your daughter for money. I understand that you've been lying to family members to prevent them from supporting Sarah. I understand that you sent Sarah a bill for cupcakes while Lily was in a coma. The line went quiet. James, I've known you for 12 years, and I have never been more disgusted by someone's behavior in my life. James hung up. That evening, Rebecca sat Sarah down for a serious conversation. Sarah, I need to tell you something. This isn't the first time James has shown this side of himself. When your grandmother was sick 2 years ago, James was very focused on the potential inheritance. He actually asked me about the contents of her will and whether her long-term care was affecting the family's financial situation. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. What? I didn't tell you because I thought it was just stress making him act strangely. But now seeing how he's treating Lily, I think this is who he really is. Rebecca stayed for a week, and during that time, Sarah learned more about James's true nature than she had in 8 years of marriage. Rebecca told her about the times James had manipulated situations for financial gain, about how he'd always resented Sarah's independence and career, about how he'd been planning to leave her for Jessica for over 2 years, but wanted to wait until he could maximize his financial position in the divorce. He's always resented that you have your own career and don't depend on him financially, Rebecca explained. Jessica is completely dependent on him, which is what he wants. Lily's accident wasn't a tragedy to him. It was either an opportunity to collect insurance money or a way to force you to become financially dependent on him for help with medical bills. The pieces were finally falling into place. James hadn't just been cruel in a moment of stress. He'd been systematically trying to control and manipulate Sarah for years. On Rebecca's last day, she hugged Sarah tightly. Sarah, you and Lily are going to be fine. You're stronger than you know, and you're an amazing mother. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After Rebecca left, Sarah felt more determined than ever to protect Lily and herself from James's toxicity. But she also felt something else, a burning desire to make sure he faced consequences for his cruelty. That's when Sarah implemented her plan. First, she called a family attorney recommended by the hospital's legal department. Sarah recorded the conversation where she told him about James's call to the hospital. She could hear the sharp intake of breath when she explained what James had asked about. Sarah, he said carefully, what your husband did could be considered attempted coercion or even a form of child endangerment if he were trying to influence medical decisions for financial gain. The lawyer helped Sarah document everything and advised her on protecting her parental rights. Next, she reached out to Dr. Patricia Williams, a prominent pediatrician in their community who sat on the hospital board and knew Sarah professionally. Dr. Williams was horrified when Sarah told her what had happened. Sarah, honey, I had no idea your husband was this cruel. What can I do to help? Dr. Williams, it turned out, was well connected in their city. She knew the partners at James's accounting firm, was friends with several judges, and had worked with many of the city's most influential families. More importantly, she had always suspected that James wasn't the devoted husband and father he pretended to be. Within days, Dr. Williams had quietly shared Sarah's story with key people in their professional community. In a mid-sized city, news travels fast, especially when it involves someone calling a hospital to ask about ending a child's life support for money. The response was swift and devastating. James worked as a senior accountant at Morrison & Associates, a prestigious firm that handled many of the city's wealthiest families. The managing partner, Robert Morrison, was a close friend of Dr. Williams and served on the Children's Hospital Board. When he learned what James had done, He called James into his office for what James later described to Jessica as the most humiliating conversation of my career. James, Mr. Morrison had said, our firm's reputation is built on trust and family values. When clients hear that one of our senior accountants was discussing ending his own child's life support for financial reasons, it raises serious questions about judgment and character. James tried to explain that he'd been misunderstood, but Mr. Morrison cut him off. The fact that you prioritized your girlfriend's daughter's school party over your own child's fight for life tells us everything we need to know about your values. We'll be restructuring your position. James was demoted from senior accountant to junior associate, effectively killing his career advancement and cutting his salary by 40%. At the same time, Jessica was facing her own consequences. Word had spread through the real estate community that she had called a grieving mother's concern for her dying child ridiculous and had billed her for cupcakes during a medical crisis. Several of her high-end clients quietly switched to other agents, not wanting to be associated with someone so heartless. But Sarah was just getting started. Lily woke up on a Friday morning, for weeks after the accident. She couldn't remember much, but she was alive, and the doctors were optimistic about her recovery. The first thing she asked for was her favorite stuffed elephant, and the second thing was whether Daddy had come to visit. No, sweetheart, Sarah said, smoothing her hair. Daddy's been busy. With what? Lily asked innocently. That's when Sarah realized her 8-year-old daughter had more emotional intelligence than her father ever would. Sarah documented Lily's recovery meticulously, every milestone, every improvement, every moment of joy, and she shared none of it with James. He only learned about Lily's progress through other people. Dr. Williams made sure to mention at social gatherings how well Lily was doing. The hospital staff celebrated her recovery. The local newspaper even did a small story about her resilience after the bus accident. James was completely shut out of his daughter's recovery story. A month after Lily woke up, James showed up at the hospital unannounced. Sarah, we need to talk. About what? Sarah asked coldly. About this ridiculous situation you've created. Jessica's really hurt that you won't speak to her, and Emma misses you. James, you called this hospital and asked about ending our daughter's life support so you could collect insurance money. That's not what happened, James snapped. I was just asking questions because I was worried about the financial impact on both our families. Both our families? James, Lily and I are your family. Jessica and Emma are your affair. James's face went pale. You're being vindictive and cruel. Jessica and I were just thinking about everyone's future. James, you asked about organ donation benefits. You asked about brain death protocols. You wanted to know how to kill our daughter. I was trying to be practical about a difficult situation. Get out, Sarah said quietly. Sarah, get out of my daughter's room, out of this hospital, and out of our lives. Don't ever contact us again. James left, but not before muttering something about how Sarah would regret this when she needed his financial support. 2 months later, Lily was home and doing well in physical therapy. Her recovery was nothing short of miraculous, and she was back to her happy, energetic self. They were planning a small celebration when Sarah got a call from Dr. Williams. Sarah, honey, you need to know something. James and Jessica broke up. Apparently, the stress of James's career troubles, combined with the community's judgment about their heartless behavior, had destroyed their relationship. Jessica had started seeing another man, someone with better financial prospects and a cleaner reputation. James had been served with a restraining order after he'd shown up at Jessica's house drunk and demanding, asking why she was abandoning him when he'd given up everything for her. But that's not the best part, Dr. Williams continued. James tried to get a loan to start his own accounting practice. The bank denied it because of his reputation in the community. Apparently, asking doctors about ending your child's life support doesn't make you a good credit risk. Sarah felt a moment of satisfaction followed immediately by sadness. This man had been her husband, and now he was a stranger who had shown her exactly who he really was when she needed him most. 3 months after the accident, Sarah got one final text from James. James, Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt anyone. Lily is my daughter, and I love her. Can we please talk? Sarah stared at that message for a long time. Part of her wanted to forgive him, to pretend none of this had happened, to let Lily have her father back. But then she looked at Lily, who was coloring at their kitchen table, alive and happy, and completely unaware that her own father had once asked doctors about ending her life. Sarah deleted the message without responding. 6 months later, their new life was better than Sarah could have imagined. Lily had made a complete recovery and was back in school. The other families from the bus accident had become like a second family to them, understanding each other in ways that only people who'd faced similar traumas could. But the most unexpected development was meeting Alexander Chun, Dr. Marcus Chin's older brother and a successful businessman who owns several medical technology companies. Alexander had heard about Sarah's situation through his brother and had quietly helped cover some of Lily's medical expenses that insurance didn't handle. When Sarah tried to thank him, he'd said simply, "Every child deserves a chance to recover, and every mother deserves support during a crisis." Alexander was kind, patient, and absolutely wonderful with Lily. They'd been dating for 10 months, and Lily adored him. He'd shown Sarah what real partnership looked like, someone who showed up during difficulties, who put family first, who would never ask her to choose between her child and social obligations. But Sarah also received an unexpected inheritance from her great-aunt Margaret, a woman she'd only met a few times who had apparently left Sarah her modest estate because she remembered how devoted Sarah was to Lily during family gatherings. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, giving Sarah and Lily the financial security she'd never had during her marriage to James. The final piece of justice came from an unexpected source. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called Sarah one afternoon. "Sarah, I wanted to let you know that Emma's been asking questions about Lily's accident. She's been telling the other children that her daddy said Lily was faking being hurt to get attention. I thought you should know." Sarah's heart broke for Emma. She was just repeating what she'd heard at home, but the other children had started avoiding her. In trying to justify their behavior about Lily's accident, James and Jessica had accidentally isolated their own child. Meanwhile, the consequences of James and Jessica's actions continued to ripple through their community. James had been forced to move to a cheaper apartment and was struggling to find steady work. His reputation in the accounting community was damaged, and few firms were willing to hire someone known for such poor judgment and questionable character. The most devastating blow came when Emma started having behavioral problems at school. The stress of her parents' relationship ending, combined with the social isolation she was experiencing, had taken a toll on the little girl. Jessica, who had always prided herself on being the perfect mother, was overwhelmed trying to manage Emma's needs while working longer hours to maintain their lifestyle after James could no longer contribute financially. But Sarah refused to take satisfaction in Emma's struggles. Despite everything, Emma was an innocent child who didn't deserve to suffer for her parents' choices. A year after the accident, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. She reached out to Jessica. "Jessica, it's Sarah." "Sarah, oh my God, I'm so glad you called. I've wanted to apologize. I'm calling about Emma," Sarah interrupted. "I heard she's having a hard time at school." "Silence. I want you to know that I don't blame Emma for anything. She's 8 years old, and she's innocent in all this. If she ever needs anything, if she needs someone to talk to, if she needs help with school, she can always come to me." Jessica started crying. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know we handled everything wrong. I know James went too far. I was scared and selfish, and I took it out on you when you were already suffering. Jessica, I can't forgive what you and James did. But Emma is just a child, and she doesn't deserve to pay for your choices." It wasn't the reunion Jessica wanted, but it was the boundaries Sarah needed to set. 18 months later, Lily and Sarah attended Emma's birthday party. Not because Jessica and Sarah had reconciled, but because Dr. Williams had organized it, and Lily wanted to see her half-sister. James wasn't there. He'd moved to another state, still struggling to rebuild his career and his life. Jessica looked tired and older, but she was making an effort to rebuild her relationship with Emma. She thanked Sarah quietly for being there for Emma during the worst period of her life. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she said, "but thank you for being the bigger person." Sarah nodded but didn't respond. Some things can't be forgiven, even when you understand the desperation that caused them. As they were leaving, Emma ran up to Lily and Sarah. "Miss Sarah, I'm sorry about what my daddy said about Lily. I know she wasn't pretending to be hurt. I'm glad she's okay." Sarah knelt down and hugged Emma. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot." Looking back now, 2 years later, Sarah realized that the accident and James's response had changed everything. It showed her who she could really count on when everything fell apart. And it wasn't the man who had promised to love her in sickness and in health. It was the doctors who fought to save her daughter, the nurses who brought her coffee at 3 in the morning, the community that rallied around them, and the new family they built from the ashes of the old one. Lily is thriving. She's 10 now, plays volleyball, and wants to be a doctor when she grows up, so I can help kids like Dr. Chen help me. She's worked hard in physical therapy and speech therapy to recover fully, but her determination has been incredible. She has some memory gaps from around the time of the accident, which the doctors say is normal and probably protective. Alexander and Sarah got married last spring, about 18 months after they first met, in a small ceremony at the hospital chapel. Lily was their flower girl, and Dr. Williams walked Sarah down the aisle. James wasn't invited, but their chosen family filled every seat. Sometimes people ask Sarah if she regrets cutting ties with James so completely. The answer is no. He showed her exactly who he was when she needed him most. He prioritized his mistress's daughter's school party over their dying child. He asked doctors about ending her life for money. He called her fight for survival attention-seeking drama. The consequences Sarah allowed to unfold weren't elaborate or dramatic. She simply let James face the natural results of his choices. When you show people who you really are, they tend to respond accordingly. James's reputation in their community was destroyed not by anything Sarah did, but by his own actions and words. Sarah learned that sometimes the best response to betrayal is just living well and protecting the people who matter most. Lily and Sarah have built a beautiful life surrounded by people who love them unconditionally. They're happy, healthy, and whole, and they never needed those cupcakes. The final irony came 6 months ago. James was diagnosed with a stress-related heart condition. He's fine, and the prognosis is good, but he reached out asking if Sarah could help with his medical expenses since families should stick together during health crises. Sarah sent him a text back. "I can't. I'm busy with my own family. Besides, I'm sure Jessica can help." After all, people who prioritize school parties over dying children probably have different ideas about what constitutes an emergency. Sarah never heard back. Lily asked Sarah recently if she'll ever see her biological father again. Sarah told her the truth, that sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love most. And when that happens, it's okay to love them from a distance to keep yourself safe. "But we have Daddy Alexander," Lily said, referring to the man who had embraced them both completely and treated Lily as his own daughter from day one, and Uncle Marcus and Aunt Patricia. Alexander's siblings and Dr. Chen's family had become the extended family Lily had always deserved. "We do," Sarah agreed. "We have a wonderful family. Just not the one we started with," Lily said with the wisdom of a child who had learned early that families come in all shapes and sizes. "Just not the one we started with," Sarah confirmed. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Mommy, are you happy?" Sarah looked at her daughter, alive, healthy, safe, and surrounded by love, and realized she'd never been happier in her life. "Yes, baby, I'm very happy." And she meant it. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the one you married into. Sometimes cutting out toxic people, even when they're your spouse, is the healthiest thing you can do. And sometimes the best response to betrayal is simply refusing to let cruel people steal your joy. Lily and Sarah learned that they didn't need someone who would abandon them in their darkest hour. They needed people who would show up with coffee and comfort and tell them everything would be okay. They found those people. They built a life with those people. And they're living happily ever after, one day at a time. The cupcakes, as it turned out, were never important at all.